Hey everybody, Gromnos here with another Was on a Simulator Battle video. Now in this video I want to talk a little bit and give a bit of feedback about the new Enduring Confrontation game mode that is planned for the 1.51 update, since we got to test it a little bit Wednesday evening. All with hopefully entertaining gameplay footage in the background as always. So let's talk about the Enduring Battle event. Well, in case you have not heard yet, this is a new game mode Gaijin announced for 1.51 for simulated battles and realistic battles. Instead of having a relatively short 15 to 13 minute battle, in this mode the battle will go on continuously for hours, and you can connect at any time, and also leave and come back later. And both teams accumulate points for achieving objectives, for example shooting down enemy planes, destroy enemy ground targets like AA, and bomb enemy airfields. Though unlike the normal mode, a destroyed airfield will get your team points but not end the game. Now, the mode also has a progressive system built in. That means you will start with a lower rank plane, and by playing and gaining points you can unlock higher rank ones, which you can take into the battle after you die or land on an airfield and get a new plane. However, the planes are on a respawn timer. The higher the rank of the plane, the longer this timer is. That means if you take a higher rank plane and you lose it, the plane of this type on this rank will be locked for quite a while, and you either have to take a different kind of plane or go back to flying a lower rank plane. Now, I will talk a little bit more about that later, but for now, let's take a look at the implementation of the test event from Wednesday. Now, since this is a test event, it is apparently not fully implemented yet, and there are a few differences to how it is supposed to be in its finished form. Now, as you can see here, we have a locked set of planes to choose from in this test that is the same for all players. According to Senyo, that was done for testing purposes, and as far as I understand it, you will be able to choose your own lineup within the available ranks in the finished version of the game mode. Now, the planes have, as you can see, different timers, longer on higher rank planes like the LA9, and also different prices, and you earn the money by achieving objectives. Again, I don't think it will go via money in the finished version, but I'm not sure. Now, as you can see, I can at the start only use the Year 2 bomber. The other planes are locked, so I will take the bomber as my first plane to unlock the other ones. However, the footage in this video will be about fighters, since I think the cockpitless bombers don't look so great in a video. Now, keep in mind that this is on the test server, and there are a few things that might be a bit bugged. Two things I have noticed was, first, the sound for nearby planes is too loud in this build, so you might notice that, and also the gunners for bombers seem to be extremely strong in this version of the game. So, I flew to an enemy airfield, bombed it, and some AA, shot down a P-409K I did not even see, yay AA gunners, and I came back. Now, with the points I earned with the bomber, I unlocked the other planes for use, so I pick a Yak-9B as my next plane and get back into the battle. I actually don't own this plane, or even a Yak-9U, but for this test everybody had this lineup unlocked. But as I said, later you should be able to choose your own lineup. Now, there are also 3 different airfields to choose from as starting point, which is nice. One problem I was worried about might show up was that in this mode camping of the airfield might be an issue, but you can pick 3 different airfields, and the ones under attack blink yellow on the map, so you know about it before you spawn in. At the moment we only have the airfields as ground targets for bombers, but that is only in the test. In the finished mode there should be more ground targets and maybe even naval targets available for attackers and fighter bombers as well. On top of that, according to the dev blog, there will be additional objectives that pop up from time to time that players can fulfill for extra points. I'm not 100% sure yet what this will entail, but I assume, for example, an armored column shows up somewhere and one team gets the mission to destroy them before they reach a certain point, and the other team has to protect them, and maybe a similar thing with AI planes or ships as well. But we will see what kind of missions will be available in the finished game mode. I have already read some suggestions on the forum about, for example, making supply line convoys, and taking them out then influences the timer of the planes. That sounds like a nice addition, and I hope it will be taken into account by the development team. Also, currently the mode is only announced for planes, but I expect that if it goes well for planes, it will be introduced for ground forces and combined arms as well, because I think the game mode would work for tanks as well. Now back to the game. As you can see here, after losing the Yak 9B, I can't take it again right away, as it is on a timer and locked. Though I'm not sure if this timer works 100% correct already. But well, that is a bit of an overview of what the game mode is supposed to be, according to the information I have at this point and how it looks like in the test we had on Wednesday. So let me give you a few thoughts and some feedback on what I know so far and some more footage from the event. I did not have that much time to play it since the test was pretty short and I only had the last half hour or so. Luckily, Gaijin does not kick you off the server after the time runs out, they just don't let more people connect. So I could test a little bit longer after the servers closed, but the player numbers of course went down after the servers closed. Well, let me start by saying that I'm quite excited about this new game mode, and it has the potential to be something really great for simulator battles as well as realistic battles, both planes as well as later hopefully tanks as well. First of all, being part of a larger fight that takes multiple hours and even being able to get back into it after taking a break just sounds cool. And there are a few things that bother me in the normal game modes, queue and events that this mode might be able to fix. For example, in some matchups at higher ranks in the queue, you can run into the problem that one team has very powerful bombers available to them. Now, what often happens, especially with joining progress, is that those heavy bombers take out the bombing points and the airfield so quickly that the game is over in minutes. Simulator pilots that played US vs Germany at the higher ranks in the past will know about this problem. Now, you could of course defend your airbase and shoot down bombers, but with the joining progress you rarely get enough of them in time to prevent the destruction of the airbase. And that could lead to matches being over while players were still spawning in on the airfield. Now, with the new Enduring Confrontation mode this would not be a problem. Sure, you can also attack airfields with your bombers and you will get points for your team for doing so. But there is no risk that the game just ends after a few minutes because one airfield is destroyed, and since air kills count for points as well in this mode, you can counter the points the bombers gain by protecting the airfield and shooting some bombers down, at least to a certain degree. Now, let's talk about another issue in the normal mode this new mode might be able to improve. And I've mentioned this one in previous videos. Imagine you play the midway map, either in the queue or an event, and you and your squad take out SPD dive bombers. You do everything like you should do in an SPD, fly in an immersive mission versus the Japanese fleet, dive bomb and sink a few cruisers for example. Now that's a fun thing to do, but you will probably run into the problem that sinking those cruisers does not actually do anything for your team, it won't help you win the match. If you know this particular map, you know that it is won or lost primarily via capturing the island. Sinking a cruiser or two won't affect that a whole lot. Maybe a slight move in the point bar, but not much. So you can do exactly what your SPD dive bomb is supposed to do on this map, dive bomb enemy ships and sink them, but it won't really help you. Now, the problem with the normal game mode you get in the queue and in events is, if they would change the map so that sinking those cruisers would have more of an effect and you could actually win the game that way, you would most likely run into the opposite problem. A team could just focus on them, sink them as fast as possible and again win the game before it really starts going, the same problem we had with the bombers before. If you on the other hand have a map like with the Enduring mode, you can take off in your SPD with your squad, take a look at the map, pick out the target you think is suitable for your squad, fly a mission against it, and the points you gain from doing so will actually matter for your team. Again, without running into the possible problem of the game ending too fast by focusing on a certain objective. The game will take a few hours no matter what, and the enemy team has an opportunity to pull it around if they fall behind. That, in my opinion, could be a great advantage, if you can really take on a mission that is suitable for your plane, and it will matter for your team if you do it well. Now, another thing that I think has real potential, which was however criticized a bit, is the progression system that comes with the new game mode. Some said they would prefer a fixed lineup like in events, with a list of available vehicles and you just pick what you want to fly from there. I personally really like the idea of the progression system, however, again, only if it is implemented well. I have to say the current test was not polished enough to say if it will be though, because it is a potential fix for yet another thing that bothers me about the normal game modes, also something I have talked about before. Now, the current test was only for planes, but I assume if the new mode will be a success, it will be implemented for tanks as well. And tanks are better suited to explain the issue I want to talk about, so I will use them as an example. My favorite event to talk about this issue is Kursk. Now, during the Battle of Kursk, the Germans did have Tiger tanks, for example, so in a Kursk event they should be available too. But if you have an event with the Tiger as well as Panzer IVGs, Stück 3s and Panzer 3s in the lineup, you're gonna have the problem that most players will choose the best tank available and almost everybody will be in a Tiger. So what you will end up with most of the time is a team where almost everybody drives a Tiger versus a team with mostly T-34-76s. Now, to balance that you either need to have ridiculous team size differences, but then what if the German team for a change does not take mostly Tigers, but takes a bigger amount of Panzer IVs and 3s, then again it is not balanced. Or you have to give the Russian team better tanks as well to counter the Tiger, and suddenly you have Tigers versus IS-1s on Kursk. That is neither very historically accurate, nor is the Tiger going to be anything special. And it kinda should be. It was a very rare tank compared to Panzer IVs and Panzer IIIs. Running into one should be a special occasion. But in the queue and in the events we currently have, it never is, because if it's available, everybody will be in one. However, with the progression system you can have those better and rare tanks in lineups as well and balance them over how much it needs to unlock them in the first place and how long they will be locked after they are destroyed and can be taken again. This way you can have the Tiger in such an event, but because it will take a while to have access to it and you're back to Panzer IVs and 3s if you lose it for a while, it will be very rare, as it should be, and running into one will be something special. It's similar for the air queue. For example, let's imagine a battle with Germany versus US that takes place in early 1945. At this point the May 262 was in service, a Mustang could run into one, but it was very rare to find one. Again, in the normal event or queue, as they are currently, you can't just put the May 262 in there and expect it to be rare. Most people that have access to it will fly it over Bf 109 or Focke-Wulf 190 if it is available in an event. The May 262 that should be rare would be spammed and the Mustang would have a very hard time. But in the new game mode you can make it rare and therefore have planes in a matchup that historically should be there without them getting spammed all the time. That goes for less extreme examples as well, like the Bf-109K, again in service in 1945, but in comparison to Bf-109Gs it was rare, so you should not run into them as often than into Bf-109Gs. Or the LA-7, again in service, but the LA-5FN was still more numerous, even at the end of the war. So I think the progression system would be a great way to make historic matchups work, even with planes like the May 262 that have a big power advantage over other planes at the time. And with planes like the May 262 or tanks like the Tiger, that is difficult to do. Now, I heard the concern that if you join a battle late, after an hour or so, you might not be able to compete versus the better planes that by then are unlocked, but from what I have seen in the test, that won't be an issue. As I said, I joined the battle in the last 30 minutes. First of all, the spread is not that high, at least not yet. You don't start out with a biplane and end up with jets. It's more about 1, maybe 2 ranks. But we will see what we end up with when the mode is released. Also, while you can unlock better planes, you have to take into account that once you lose them, they will be locked and you have to go back to the lower ones. So by the time you join, there's most likely still a nice mix of higher and lower rank planes. And also higher rank planes, while more powerful, also often require more know-how and discipline to do well in, because they are also often heavier and turn less well. Many players will often do better in lower rank planes. For example, I remember in the old Stalingrad event, where the top plane you could take for the Germans were the Bf-109F4 and the lowest rank was the Heinkel He 112B. In this event I often saw the Heinkel 112B at the top of the leaderboard, because they could outturn LA-5s and Yaks easily while the F4 had a harder time doing it. Now the Bf-109 is still the far better plane, but against the better turning Yak you still need some know-how to use it correctly, and if the Yak and LA-5 pilots are willing to turn with you, as many players are, a lot of people have an easier time beating them in a plane that can outturn them. Well, those are some preliminary thoughts on the new game mode. I know that there was not much actual feedback yet, more explaining why this new game mode could be a great thing, but the version we got to play in the test was still in a very early state with a lot of features missing, so there is not that much to give proper feedback about yet. I will give more feedback when we get a more finished version of this mode. Well, and this is it for this video. As always, I hope it was informative, thanks for watching, and maybe I see you next time.